just we'll touch on Prado. Pretty interesting about the Supercross. There's obviously a lot of chat that he might be lining up next year at A1 and do a couple, but it's very interesting, listen to that podcast with Jace from Gypsy Tales. Really cool dude. I've done a podcast with him few months ago, and he does those interviews so well. So always cool to see another Aussie as well, mate, getting the accent out there. But no, it's just so many variables, and there's always learning to go on, even when you're that good, isn't there, mate? There's so much that can be taught and still gained, and just the way to manage a season. So do you think he does the Supercross? Obviously, the skill set adaptation is probably a little bit easier for someone like him with that fundamental base skill set and just the talent that he has and the way he approaches things. He's like a very stable, connected rider. He doesn't often do like the crazy crashes. Everything's in line, and I guess the technique allows him to ride in a safe manner as well, doesn't it? Which bodes well for Supercross, even though it is just an absolutely different beast and essentially a different sport. But if he does go down that avenue, it'd be really interesting, because one thing is riding and training, and then racing it is a completely different animal. So it'll be a cool story to follow, mate. Where do you think he goes? And I guess what are the key principles that hold him in good stead to actually succeed on Supercross, and maybe some things that might be a challenge? Obviously, the whoops will be, sometimes the smaller guys struggle with the whoops, but just your take on all of that, mate.
Yeah, you know what? It's always scares me a little bit. I've seen, great world champions going from, being very successful in Europe and then going over to start doing Supercross. My own experience with Supercross is very little. I've always been a rider that loved to jump and do things. But, once I actually started making a career in motocross, I kind of thought, like, I'll stick to this and try to see how far I can bring that. But I've always been very impressed with Supercross. And I think, of course, Jorge Prado have, all the talent in the world to be able to do it. And you would probably, when we had Greg Albertine back in the days announcing that he's going to the US and do Supercross, you're thinking, holy shit, he is, that is not going to go well. But he did fairly well. He won an outdoor 250 championship in 99, I believe. And, he was very good, but there's definitely certain riders that you think, if, let's say, Jeffrey Hurlings would announce that he's going to go to the Supercross, I would probably be a little bit more concerned if I was the KTM manufacturer, even for him personally. That's just my opinion. Maybe I could be completely wrong. Tim Geiser, he did the Paris Supercross as well, but let's just not forget that there was no whoops. And I think a lot of it, us can jump and we can speed, but a different kettle of fish when you start approaching those whoops, they is almost as high as the bike. And that was that is something that I don't know. I do not know because I'm not there. Jorge Prado, they showed, I saw some whoops, but for me, if you analyze those small clips, and I'm not sure if I actually I'm completely right about this, but it didn't look like the whoops was actually going in that same direction. But anyway, that's just my little idea. Not taking anything away from him, because I think he's a great rider. But I think that the biggest problem with riding in the US is, of course, the intensity of this, racing in Supercross. And like you said, there is a different thing between practicing and going around. I was at Pro Circuit some years ago when I did the World Vet in Glen Helen, and I was so lucky to get invited out to Pro Circuits one of the test day. And I was very impressed because, some of the jumps you have to turn like triple. And one thing for me to think, looking at the track and think, I can do that. I can maybe jump the jumps and do the whoops, in the preseason, when they're still a little bit smaller, and then they build them bigger, as I understood. I could probably learn to do that and it will not be too sketchy. But the difference is then when you start racing between triples and doubles and, that speed that they need to go from, let's say, now I'm just pronouncing a number, like 50 kilometers, and then I have to brake on the ramp to go 30 kilometers an hour. And then if there are 5 centimeters or 10 centimeters, whatever centimeters too short or too long, that is the difference between breaking all your bones in the body and carry on, because the next is a left straight after they're actually landing and turning left, And that's where I'm standing there thinking, wow, the timing that they need to do. One thing is that they need to do all the jumps and do them consistency, and the consequences are so high. But to actually be able to race those jumps and scrub and break up and actually feeling with them, people don't realize how difficult that is, when you
all
break
the
the speed off
calculations.
and all the calculation, like, okay, now I know I need to go from 60 and to 31 kilometers an hour. And that needs to be sitting there precisely every single lap without a doubt. Because if you don't do that, that have the consequences of a lot of things. So that's the thing I could be a little bit worried about with Prado is like, I don't know how much Supercross that he have written, but I do believe no matter what skills you have, no matter what kind of technique you have, to have the racecraft that you will need to do to ride Supercross is not something that you just learn. It's something that will take, for me, some years. If you have the same talent as Jorge Prado, I still think it's going to be difficult. If I was him, which I'm not, if I was him, I would just, I would go. I understand the point of view that challenging yourself and living the American dream and maybe become a good Supercross rider, which he could. I have no idea. I think nobody really knows what he will do until it comes, racing. And, we hear rumors about he's going to show up at Anaheim 1. If it was me, which is not, and it's only my opinion, I would probably, thinking I want to defend the World Championship this year. I don't care so much about Supercross. And then when I can find a hole in my calendar, and that's probably going to be after the season, I would go over and I will be specific working after my second world title, if that's the goal, to be, become a Supercross rider as early as I can. When the season is finished, go over there, start riding Supercross, because I'm always in a believer, and I've been like that in my own career. My goal was to win a world championship, but I had like always small goals between being, first thinking I'm going to be Danish champion. And when I'm Danish champion, I have nothing more to challenge here. Then I want to be a European champion. And when I have proved that I was good enough to be a European champion, then you go after the big goal, and the big drill is to be a world champion, and that's a lot higher goal, of course, and that takes a lot more year. And for some people, it never happened, but you give you the best shot. But to go and having the talent like Prado and thinking that you do a couple of practicing in Supercross, and then you have to do other drills and get ready for the World Championship, and then just go over and do a AMA first round. For me, that is very risky business.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on. And I guess with a lot of the Americans, they started so young on Supercross, it's like a life's body of work in a lot of ways. It's so hard just to click your fingers. Obviously, he did some many years ago when he was a youngster, and obviously that little stint that he's done now. But whether that's enough preparation, I guess only he'll know. And if he feels confident and the people around him feel like he's ready, I guess he'll give it a crack. But it's a big challenge. Like you see, even at the Newcastle Supercross on the weekend, you see those 85cc kids attacking it. And, there's like a mindset from so young to attack whoops and to attack transitions and sections and know what to do. And just all those little nuances you mentioned that, it takes time to learn all that. And it takes probably the best part of a decade to, get those habits in place to succeed. Like with anything, so much practice needs to go into it. And I know he's a special talent. There's no doubting that, but whether it translates, there's a lot of unknowns, but it's exciting nonetheless, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, definitely. And only time can tell, but, that's why I said, I can only tell what I would have done if I was in his situation, out from what I have seen over the years. So many great riders going over there. That was the same, and I'm sure that some riders, look back, like Ben Townley, for example, if you take him as example, 2005, he finished sixth in the world, and then, in MX1 class, and there was Stefan Edwards that was actually settling for retirement very soon, basically in 2006. So if and we can always see if and if, but if I was Ben Townley, I would have stayed in Europe. Trying to beat Stefan Edwards in 2006 would probably been very difficult, as his worst place was second place. Otherwise, he won every single moto, almost going for a perfect season. But then 2007, if you see from 2007 up to 2010 probably, or a little bit less maybe, it was wide open. It might, Steve Ramon won a world championship, not, winning a race. I think very few podiums, but just consistent in top 5, top 6. And he won a world championship because, Joshua Coppens lost his rear brake going down in one of the big jumps in Loket in Czechoslovakia. And that was it. And he became world champion, David Philipparts as well, which, don't get me wrong, well done and well deserved, but they were not, Ben Townley for sure.
Yeah, so but look back at those turning points, don't you?
I think Ben is looking. Maybe he looked back on it, or he doesn't, and said, "Fuck it, I had a good time in the US." But I definitely think it's something like that I'm looking at, and thinking if you can be a world champion and already establish yourself, you're on a good roll, let's be honest, if you are a world champion and riding to a factory, GasGas or Husqvarna, you're earning also quite good money and some good bonuses. Matter of how you make the contract, but there's a lot to be gained, and we never know what the future is gonna bring. So I will bring more the consistency of something that I know this is my area. I'm gonna fucking challenge that and get the best out of that, and then once I have proven again that I can win, then yeah, okay, now I won it 2 times. Now it's time maybe to do the other challenge. He's still young. He's only 22 years old, something like that. So he of course have a lot of years. That's why, I will look at the consistency thing. Okay, let me go 1 or 2 seasons. I want to defend that title. I want to prove to everyone with Hurlings in this, because there's always going to be some people talking, saying that, you won it because, Jeffrey Hurlings got injured. Yeah, but that's the part of the game. It's, when someone get hurt, but if we can bring it again, and Jeffrey Hurlings will come down to, hopefully a whole season next year, and Prado still wins, it'd be like, yeah, okay, no more questions have to answer,